Lore of the Old World, Armies of Legend, Chapter 5, Ogre Kingdoms. An ogre army is a fearsome sight, a sweaty mass of hulking monstrosities with a real appetite for destruction. Ogres are utterly ruthless and enjoy using their massive brawn to dominate others. In battle they are accompanied by primeval monsters and shaggy tusked beasts from an ice-ridden age that still prowl the world. Armies of ogres do not just defeat their enemies, they break them, grind them, and then consume them in great gory chunks. Then they look for more. Ogres call the leaders of their tribes tyrants, and it is obvious why. These hulking beasts rule their domains with iron fists, both figuratively and literally. Unlike the kingdoms of men, where ruling titles pass from parent to child, the title of tyrant must be earned by defeating the existing tyrant in single combat. The loser of these leadership challenges is then devoured by the victor in a cannibalistic display of dominance. Bruisers are a tyrant's closest cronies, and regularly act as enforcers and disciplinarians. Sometimes a bruiser will carry a tribe's standard into battle, massive banners weighed down with all manner of trophies and tokens of the tribe's many victories, which, unsurprisingly, double as effective bludgeoning weapons in the hands of a brutish ogre. The grotesque, gore-splattered creatures known as butchers are amongst the few ogres who can harness the winds of magic, doing so by consuming all manner of unpalatable food. By swallowing down a pile of steaming troll guts, a butcher can bestow regenerative properties onto the ogres around them. By grinding chunks of rocks with their teeth, they can harden the flesh of their companions. Butchers stand at the centre of ogre society, for their connection to the Great Maw makes them akin to the priests and prophets of other races. The most powerful of these shaman-like figures are given the title of Slaughtermaster, butchers of incredible skill and brutality that have carved chunks from most of the beings that have walked or crawled across the old world. Fiercely independent warriors who have spent years wandering the dangerous mountains of Morn, hunters are experts at tracking and bringing down the mighty beasts that stalk between the peaks. Hunters are easy to identify by their unique attire, covered in the pelts of the beasts they have slain, and carrying a vast array of weapons, from large throwing spears to traps and clubs. Though they prefer solitude, hunters will occasionally haul an impressive kill back to an ogre encampment to feast and to share stories of their mighty hunts. Occasionally, a hunter will be seen fighting alongside the beasts they usually track, hunting their foes from the back of a stonehorn or thunder tusk, or stalking the enemy in near-perfect unison with a pack of saber tusks. Ogre firebellies roam the land preaching of the Firemouth, an ogre deity revered alongside the Great Maw. Quick to anger, fire burns in them in both a literal and metaphorical sense, for the punishing trials they undertake end with them consuming lava from the Firemouth itself. In battle, firebellies are able to draw upon that inner flame to not only protect themselves from the flaming attacks of their foes, but also to bathe those foolish enough to stand against them in the heat of a volcano. If that were not dangerous enough, firebellies are also able to draw upon the winds of magic to bombard their enemies with balls of fire and pillars of scorching flame. Stonehorns are living battering rams. They embody everything an ogre holds dear. They are big, strong, and destructive in equal measure, able to shatter stone and metal with a thunderous headbutt. There are many stories of a stonehorn charging at full speed into a cliffside, only for the very mountain itself to give way to the beast's assault. Solitary creatures that roam the frigid lands to the north, thunder tusks have walked the old world since the dawn of time. Needing to consume vast quantities of food to sustain their massive bodies, thunder tusks hunt using their icy breath to hurl magically infused icicles that rend and tear the flesh of their prey. Ogres are simple-minded creatures, well known for their massive size and violent disposition. They are voracious eaters, their desperate desire to gorge themselves on fresh meat eclipsed only by their need to smash anything that gets in the way of their messy feasting. On the field of battle, ogres will band together into large formations, before rushing headlong at the foe with thunderous force, smashing into the first few ranks before laying into their victims with crude clubs and oversized blades. Usually composed of a mixture of a tyrant's immediate family and their favoured cronies, Iron Guts are some of the best armed and armoured ogres in a tribe. Carrying monstrous two-handed weapons which range from forged steel to stone clubs, a group of Iron Guts can smash their way through fortified gates as swiftly as they would a regiment of soldiers. Each Iron Gut wears an ornamental gut plate and covers their thick muscular frames in heavy plates of scavenged metal from their many victories over the years. Ogres have learned to respect the potency of black powder weapons. Cannons in particular encapsulate everything that an ogre admires. They are big, loud, and have an unprecedented ability to turn an enemy into a bloody pulp. Without the ability to craft cannons for themselves, ogres have been forced to rely on looting cannons from the battlefield, or trading with the Empire, Cathy or Chaos Dwarfs in order to acquire them. Called lead belchers by their kin, those ogres that wield these weapons often end up with faces full of black powder and shrapnel following an inevitable malfunction. Rather than hunt their prey like ogres would, nobblers prefer the art of trapping, ensnaring their prey in serrated man-snappers, spiked pitfalls and barbed nooses. Once their quarry is in hand, they play with their prisoners a while, before settling in for a meal, or presenting it to their masters to enjoy as a snack. Elite bands of mercenary ogres who have travelled far are known as man-eaters. A common sight in the warring lands of the Empire and the border princes, these opportunistic soldiers of fortune eagerly fight for anyone who can offer coin, exotic war gear, or exorbitant volumes of food and ale as payment. Should an ogre spend any great length of time in one particular region, they will adopt the culture and fighting styles of their new homeland. Those who spend years within the Empire will sport coloured breeches or ostentatious feathered caps and use handguns as oversized pistols, whilst those who do battle alongside the orcs of the Badlands might sport colourful war paint or cover themselves in furs and take to the battlefield with heavy bladed axes. Smaller and more cowardly than their goblin cousins, Noblars willingly act as servants to ogres in return for a degree of protection. When the ogre tribe marches to war, Nobblers will band together in large hordes to pester the enemy with whatever sharp stuff they can find. Yetis are monstrous beasts that inhabit the tallest peaks of mountain ranges across the world and have adapted well to their frozen domains, sporting thick coats of white fur and elongated claws that allow them to scale the sheerest rock faces. Though most Yetis tear their prey limb from limb with these claws, some will snatch up crude clubs which they freeze with their ice-cold breath and use to bludgeon their foes to a bloody pulp. Thanks to its powerful frame, a saber-tusk is able to leap upon its prey as it slashes and stabs with its elongated tusks, aiming to maim and incapacitate its quarry. Even a solitary saber-tusk can easily bring down a man, but an entire pack of these stealthy hunters can bring down even the mightiest beasts to be found in the mountains of Morn. The taming of a Mournfang is a dangerous and often fatal undertaking, for the notoriously bad-tempered beasts do not easily submit to a rider. The best time for an ogre to attempt to break a Mournfang is whilst it lies exhausted from hunting and feeding, though even an exhausted Mournfang is capable of throwing a would-be rider from its back and goring them to death. Should an ogre hang on long enough for the beast to submit, the life of a Mournfang rider awaits them. The goring tusks and savage nature of the Mournfang, combined with the heavy weapons and brutality of the ogre, places Mournfangs amongst the fiercest shock cavalry ever seen on the battlefields of the Old World. Though rare, the ogres will occasionally bring to bear the massive bronze cannons of the ancient Sky Titans, hauling them into battle atop roughly hewn sleds drawn by foul-smelling rhinocs. These enormous artillery pieces are packed to the brim with black powder and cannonballs, which are unleashed towards the enemy with a thunderous explosion, much to the delight of any nearby ogres. In order for such a vast machine to fire with some regularity, gangs of noblars will assist with the operation of these huge field guns, despite the risk of being shot towards the foe along with the original payload if they do not finish loading the cannon swiftly enough. The scrap launcher is a potent war machine that hurls piles of scavenged weapons soaring towards the foe. Even though many of these rusted knives and swords clang off armour almost entirely, the sheer number of pointed projectiles means that some will find exposed flesh or gaps in armour. The strange choice of projectile is partly due to the fact that these haphazard war machines are crewed by nobblers, who are too small or, more likely, too lazy to haul around large rocks. The other reason is that ogres are far too large to make use of the puny man-sized weapons that are scavenged from the battlefield, giving the nobblers a near-endless supply of pointy bits to launch towards the enemy. Ogres who prove themselves capable of taming a mighty stonehorn are revered and respected by their tribe, for the domestication of such a wild and unruly beast is a perilous and usually fatal undertaking. Once a bond has been formed between the beast and its crew of riders, however, a near unstoppable relationship is formed, as the stonehorn's destructive prowess is given purpose and direction by its new masters. As the stone horn smashes into the foe with devastating headbutts and tramples the survivors under its hooves, the riders fire harpoons from their oversized crossbows to skewer those who avoid the stone horn's wrath. Thundertusk riders fight differently from most units that make up the armies of the Ogre Kingdoms, hammering the foe from afar with powerful blasts of ice and bolts fired from harpoon launchers. That is not to say the Thundertusk lacks the ability to dish out damage once it meets the enemy in close quarters, for its massive tusks can gore foes the size of a giant, and sweep aside formations of warriors as easily as an ogre might swat a fly. If that were not enough, the frosty aura that surrounds these primordial beasts quickly saps the strength of those brave enough to stand their ground against the might of the Thundertusk and its riders. Ever since they devoured the Sky Titans during the Big Migration, ogres have harboured a near-compulsive desire to kill and devour any giant they happen across. Some tyrants are able to restrain themselves from attacking a giant on sight, however, and those who do will try to recruit the lumbering brute to join their tribe in battle, promising payment in plenty of food and more ale than it can drink. More brash tyrants may try to intimidate a giant into joining their tribe, either by challenging the lumbering behemoth to single combat or by scaring it with fiercely exaggerated tales of the tyrant and their tribe's past victories against the Sky Titans. A race as old as the mountains, much taller and more intelligent than the giants that lumber across the world today, the Sky Titans were unbothered by the other races, hidden away in their fortresses of carved stone in the realm above the clouds. This was until the big migration drove the ogres through their mountains, throwing the two sides into a bloody conflict. Though the Sky Titans were much larger than the ogres, they were outnumbered and outmatched by their ravenous foes. One by one the Sky Titans fell and were devoured, and the ogres grew stronger with each Sky Titan they consumed. Malformed infant ogres are abandoned in the caves of the Mountains of Morn by their tribes. Those that survive alone in the dark become gorgers, foul and barely sentient creatures driven by ravenous hunger. Though they mostly live underground, gorgers will be drawn out of their lairs by ogres when the tribes march to war, capturing the ravenous beasts in iron cages to prevent them from going on a killing spree before the battle begins. Gorgers hunt their prey with elongated claws as long and sharp as swords, and possess enough strength to tear the head off a man in a single gruesome snap of their massive toothy maws. Ogres are drawn to shiny trinkets and elaborate attire, driven by a compulsive need to possess such items and flaunt them in front of others to demonstrate their wealth and status. Similarly, though the weapons they craft for themselves are simple and crude, they collect finely made weapons even if their gigantic and clumsy hands could never hope to wield such things. Thus many possess enchanted items and blessed weapons, most stolen from the corpses of vanquished enemies, others taken in payment for mercenary work. Such items might be turned into jewellery or fashioned into weapons and armour more fitting of an ogre's physique by their new owners, and passed around amongst tyrants and bruisers for generations to come. Emissaries of the Great Maw suck marrow from cracked bones or stuff huge chunks of raw meat into their mouths to aid their magical abilities. As they do, those around them feel replenished, the gnawing hunger that eternally chews at their guts subsiding.